Hello, everyone out there in podcast world. Hope you're having a wonderful day. You're listening to or watching Service Business Mastery Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Tersh Blissett, sitting virtually next to my co-host, Joshua Crouch. And today we're going to talk with Brian Grainger, and we're going to talk about sales. He's a sales coach from Josh's neck of the woods, old neck of the woods, and has personally helped out Josh and Brittany, his wife. So they have a personal relationship with Brian, and I'm super excited to hear Brian talk today about sales, and we're going to talk a little bit about becoming an effective leader, overcoming organizational challenges, empowering your team. With that being said, sales training is a very touchy subject because in our industry, it's the technician side of things. I feel like more often than not, they feel like when you say the word sales, it's an evil word, like you're a bad company, bad person, because you're a salesman. And so I like to just have these conversations and demystify that whole thought process, because without sales, your business goes out of business. So
Yeah, and Brian's great. He's got it's all about the process, right? Um, it's not just a process he shows you once, lets you do your thing. He literally does the process in front of you, in the truck, in front of a customer, and he sells really well. Brittany has seen it firsthand. I've heard plenty about it after days when they rode together and stuff. So he's got a lot of experience. He's helped grow some companies in Wisconsin, and Wisconsin's not like your California markets or your like some of these coastal markets, or even some of these big populations in the Midwest. It is, populations of most towns are 10, 15, 20,000 people. There's not big markets with a ton of houses. You have to drive to get there. So excited to talk about Brian and catch up with him again, because it's been a little bit, probably since last fall since we talked. Yeah, excited to have him share his story and some of the experiences he's had with you guys. And I know he's trying to maybe get out there a little bit and maybe do some more on-site. So I think there should be some good value for our listeners today.
Absolutely. Before we get started, I'd love to give a shout out to the people who make this podcast possible. They really show us support every single week and every single month, both monetarily and knowledge wise. These couple companies here that we're about to talk about, anytime we have questions, they are just Johnny on the spot and really just answer the questions and help us out a ton. With that being said, I'd like to talk about Sarah and Billy. If you're interested in a CRM, if you don't have a CRM, if you hear people talking about CRMs or us talking about a CRM or customer relationship management software, Sarah and the team over at Sarah Billy is an amazing group of people, and their platform is growing by leaps and bounds. Every time I talk to Billy, he's got this new thing to introduce, which is amazing to me, how fast he's growing. And the thing that I really love about Billy and his whole team is if it's not simple, they're not going to do it. If it's like, because I've asked him certain things, well, can you do this and can you do that? And he'll say, why do you want to do that? It's like, I don't know, because that's just what we have to do. And he's like,
and they're living proof. Their Billy Go's going to be an $11-12 million company in 3 years.
Yeah. And yeah, Billy Go. So, I mean, the company that he started to just try it out is crazy successful. So yeah, huge shout out to Sarah, and thank you for everything that y'all do over there, Billy. And Company Cam, yes. I'll talk Company Cam next, real fast. Yeah, Company Cam is one that Josh loves. I like it too. It's where you're a dam. I think that's what we talked about the other episode, a few episodes ago, the digital asset management program. And so for a lot of technicians, they're always throwing, pictures on their phones, their data plates, the pictures of before and afters of their installs, the coil change outs. And a digital asset management tool like a Company Cam is great because all of that stuff can be stored in one location. And then Company Cam takes this step.
And it's not on your phone.
Yeah, it's not there on your phone. You don't have to worry about all that data.
Stuff like that. Yep.
Yeah. And Company Cam takes another step further, so that they have some integrations with your websites so that you can create an actual slider on the camera or carousel on your homepage or wherever you want to, and it stores that metadata also, which Google loves, that those little tidbits of information showing where you've been doing service work and all that good jazz. So huge shout out to Company Cam as well. And then we have a new partner that it just signed up. Actually, I think they signed the paperwork yesterday, but we've been very good friends with these guys, and they've been on the podcast before. Josh, you want to talk about them?
Yeah, so Upfrog is the company. It's a digital marketing company. They do a few different things, but I guess what they really started with is having contractors own the online pricing experience, so that way the boxes aren't being sold by a third party that never touches the box.
Mm-hmm.
So the contractor is still completely in charge of the entire process from start to finish. And I talk to Justin, and so does Tersh, but very regularly, like almost on the daily. And they're having some crazy, crazy good success with that stuff. Whether you believe in online pricing or not, it's there. It is coming. It's something that you should know about, if nothing else, and then you can make your decision. Be well educated on the topic. But they've been doing some really great things, and he's got some other things coming soon that are going to be very, very cool. But really happy to have him on, just because we love hanging out with him and at shows and talking to him. So it's always a good time.
Yeah, Justin and Noah, they're great guys, and they're full of knowledge too. And it's really cool to see Justin. He's done these businesses over here, and then Noah, he's a younger guy, and he just brings that nice mixture of the new versus. I'm not gonna call Justin old, but I'm just gonna say new and old. But Justin's still very much in his prime.
I hope he's watching.
I do too. But a huge shout out to those guys over there. I'm excited to have them on the show again. But with that being said, I hope you're excited for today's show as much as we are. And let's get started with today's show.
Are you looking for valuable business advice to reach that 7-figure revenue mark? Do you want actionable tips to properly navigate through every business challenge you encounter along the way? Let Tersh Blissett and Josh Crouch be your guide in getting you to the top here at Service Business Mastery. Tune in as they sit down with world-renowned authors in business, leadership, and personal growth who share valuable insights about management, marketing, pricing, human resources, and so much more. Let their nuggets of wisdom gold guide you in owning a thriving, profitable, and ever-growing business. Here are your hosts, Tersh and Josh.
Welcome, Brian.
How we doing, guys?
Good.
Very good. It's good to have you on the show. I know it's we talked about it previously, and we finally just had time to get you on here and share your experience. But if you kind of want to start, just because you've kind of been holed up in Wisconsin for a while, if you want to kind of share your story a little bit, and I guess what has gotten you to the point where people hire you as a consultant.
Well, I've been in the HVAC industry for about 30, going on 31 years, and started off just like everybody else, running pipe and doing residential installs and service and sales. And eventually, what kind of really got me rolling on the business side was I was part of a company when I got in the industry that had, I think we had about 6 guys when I first started. And as we got going, the company started growing like crazy, and we ended up with over 130 guys maybe. And I was on the board of directors at that shop for quite a long time, and really just got me thinking about, the business aspect, to the point where I ended up wanting to go to the distributor side, just because I wanted to see the other side of the industry. Like we're in the industry from the customer side, but not from the other side. So I actually got some experience being a sales manager for a distributor here in Wisconsin, and I was one of their head service techs, just helping customers out from the service side. just the guy that I used to call when I needed help in the field. I was kind of, that guy, and just reaching out to a lot of, I think it was 149 companies I was working with at that time. And that led me into buying into a business. And we grew the business rather quickly to the point we had a lot of employees. I was working crazy hours, as a lot of you guys, owners out there know. It takes a lot of time and effort to make a business go if you want it to be successful. And so I did that for a while. Eventually sold that company and went to another company and that really wanted to grow in the industry. And they were a plumbing and heating company, and I helped really get an electrical division going, a design build division going, and really just growing that company to a pretty large player in Wisconsin. And through that, just with all the growth in the companies that I had been with, including mine, I had some of the big name suppliers, big name product, people wanting me to kind of go into consulting, because they knew if they can get me in front of some of their best customers out there, it's only going to make them more money, because now their best customers are going to be selling like crazy and just being more profitable, which helps them grow as well. So I started in the consulting side of it. I left that company with no customers whatsoever, and I just kind of prayed and got out there, and within like a couple of weeks my schedule was full, and I've pretty much had a packed schedule, a waiting list of clients for the last going on 4 years here. So but I'm at a point now that the goal is really to help as many people as possible. So I'm not looking for to really just, get my name out there and, pump it up and it's all about me. That's not the goal. The goal is really to just help as many people in the industry as I can, because I'm here sitting in the seat because of this industry, so most people take that for granted, and this industry has treated many of us very well. And so I feel like, it's my duty to kind of help people get to that next level. So
that's awesome. You and you do a mixture of things. Sometimes you work with somebody more intimately where you're in their shop regularly, all of those types of things. And you also do some online stuff. Is that right?
Yeah. So every shop I work for is different, right? So I'm not just like a guy that is a sales consultant. Like, I work with the company from top to bottom. So when I work with the company, the main thing is knowing that the owner is set first, because the company is not going anywhere if the owner isn't, got their stuff together. And let's face it, in this industry, most of the owners of heating, plumbing, electrical shops, they were a tech, they were an installer that said, hey, I want to make money for myself and I want to do it myself. And so they go into their own business, not knowing what it takes. So not knowing why they should be charging what they charge. They not good leaders, don't know anything about HR or financials or any of that. So first and foremost, that's what I look into first, is just to make sure, do we got everything in order on that front first before we start diving into people, so most of them don't have processes in place and standard operating procedures. And so that's the stuff that I like to tackle first. And then if they got all that in order, now it's getting into call center training, and riding along with service techs, making sure these guys are installing properly into code and quality, and getting it done in a timely manner. And then really focusing on, getting the techs to set good leads, or if they're selling techs, what does that process look like on how to sell to the customer, or flipping it to a lead where the sales guy can now go out there and actually sell the job for, a good profit. So it's kind of a all-in-one thing. There's not too many people that, go into a company with that kind of a mentality. Most of them are like, I'm going to show up at your shop, I'm going to train your techs for 2 days, see you later, and I won't see you for another 2 years.
Well, that's what I find really fascinating about you, Brian. You literally, I remember stories of what Brittany was telling me. You're literally going in and making repairs in the field. Not that that's what you want to do, but you're still capable of doing those things. So you're not just going in there to train on the sales or to train on the operations or the CSR team. You have the experience and you bring all of those things together, and because you've actually done all of those things.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about your stories. You literally, you're not, and you also, you're a little more modest than some things we've seen online. So I appreciate that, which everyone's got to do them. But I love the fact that you're helping local Wisconsin companies, not just going after like big ticket companies in California or Vegas or, stuff like that. So, but it's,
Hey,
go ahead.
let me ask you a question, Brian. At what size should people start looking to hire a sales consultant, or not? I mean, you said you're not just a sales consultant, but anyone that's similar to yourself there.
I would say getting one as early as, starting your business off from the beginning. Like I helped a shop that had no heating division whatsoever, and they were just new to the industry. The guy was I want to say he was in marketing or something, and he decided to buy a heating company and start a heating company with no experience. So I went in there and pretty much from the ground up built his platform and got his business plan in place and got his financials, and we started hiring guys and we started going after, customers and we built it up, and now the guy's been in business for 3 years now, and he's already purchased 2 other companies, and the guy, he's rolling, so he's rebranded. I mean, and so
I think I know who that is.
Yeah. So there's no real sweet spot of what you're looking for. Now, obviously,
what if it's a like you mentioned, it's a technician who has just wanted to like kind of just start their own thing.
Yeah.
They were doing the thing in the truck, and then they said, I want to try this on my own.
Yeah.
Most of the times as a technician, we don't know, like you said, we don't know accounting, we don't know marketing, we don't know a lot of things. We know how to turn wrenches and provide great customer service.
Yeah.
When should they be out of the truck before they're bringing you on? Or is it because sometimes when you're first starting out, more often than not, I see that people price themselves wrong. First off, they're pricing themselves wrong. So when they do that, they can't afford to hire a consultant at any, because they don't have the right prices. They're just paying themselves. They basically have another job. And so what would you say to someone who is like, I couldn't afford to have a consultant. I can barely afford to pay my own bills right now.
Yeah. So I've actually got a client like that I work with. And when you're working with someone, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be on site, which when you're on site with a shop, that's where, your pricing, it's harder to afford a consultant. But for me, if I can help somebody that's brand new out of it, just in a truck, still out in the field, I do a lot of phone calls. I do a lot of Zoom meetings with guys, and really just trying to help them out to get to that next level. And part of that is like, hey, send me your financials. Let me look at what you got going on so I can figure out how to get you to the point where I can start coming on site, and that's really the first thing, is because, the other side of it is you have a lot of guys that start businesses and then they feel like they need to be out of the truck right away. And then now they're just overhead, so now they don't have income coming in. So first, you have to get them to a point where they can have guys in the field where they can rely on them before they step out of the truck. And a lot of guys find that out the hard way, and then they go out of business because, they've made that mistake. So, but yeah, it's there's no sweet spot. It's just a matter of, you're taking each company one at a time, and you're really digging into what they need and how to get them there. So I have shops that are pretty large shops that have a lot of stuff in place already, but they suck at training, or they're just, they're not good at that side of it. And so what they do is they just hire a bunch of guys that, that are off the street, and then they bring them in, and then they realize that those guys are out there for a reason, and they keep going through this vicious cycle where I'm more of the guy that will hire guys brand new with no experience, maybe out of tech school, and ride with them every single time I'm at that shop until those guys are rock solid, communicating, selling, and fixing stuff. And it's an ongoing thing. And then when you got that guy good, guess what? There's 2 more guys behind them that you need to train. So it's like, it's an ongoing thing. But for me, like you were saying, Josh, I am in the field a lot. Like I would say 60% of the time I'm at a shop, I'm actually in the field with technicians. Yesterday, I was actually changing a heat exchanger with a brand new guy that's never changed a heat exchanger. So, which normally I don't recommend changing heat exchangers. We're replacing equipment, but this was on like a 6-year-old unit that had a big monstrous hole in the heat.
Good training moment.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, whenever you do an on-site with someone like that and you're helping them change out the heat exchanger, what exactly are you doing there? Like what's other than showing them how to properly do a heat exchanger, is there any other like training that you're doing while with that technician?
Yeah, so when I'm with the technician, process is number one, most important. So we've all been through these processes through different success groups, and the approaching of the home and the conversation with the homeowner and the building rapport. That's got to be first and foremost before you even pull a tool out of your bag. I mean, so these guys got to understand that whole process first before you can start giving them tools and ripping stuff out. So I make sure that they got that down first. And then every time I'm doing interviews and I'm hiring people, when you ask people what's the best way for them to learn, how do you give me some stories of how you've learned something, what did that look like, and they all are hands-on people. Every technician out there, I can count on my hands where people didn't say they weren't hands-on when you were hiring them. So people like to have a tool in their hand and they like to do it themselves. So for me, I like them to have their tools and they're the ones doing the work. If I got to jump in, I do, but I rather have them having the nut driver, the screwdriver in their hand, and they're taking it out themselves, because that's how most of these guys learn out there. So, but yeah, it really just, it's a process that they have to follow. And the reason that most of these companies are growing, several $1 million a year that I'm working with, it's because they're learning the process, and the process that I teach, and Brittany will probably share this, would tell you this, that I'm not like a high pressure, salesy type of a person. I'm more of a build a lot of rapport and educate and close all the doors as I'm going through my process, to the point where they don't have any objections at the end of the process. They can't say, I can't afford it, or I need to talk to my spouse, or I'm getting other estimates, because I already know all that. So by the time I get to the point of, closing the sale and I'm teaching these guys this, it's all about the process. It's really process with all the guys.
So with that process being, you mentioning that process, what if there's no process in place right now? Like if it's a very
everybody's
new company,
doing their own thing.
Yeah. Well, if maybe it's a new company, maybe it's a company that's kind of grown by just mistake almost.
Yeah.
And you just kind of have just winged it. And if you have a question, call the boss man. If otherwise, just do what you do.
Yeah.
What do you do in that scenario? Like, what processes do they put in place, and how do you even know how to put a process in place?
Well, that's pretty much almost every shop I go to, unfortunately. So it's a challenge from the get-go. So what I do when I come to a shop, once I'm done shadowing, I like to shadow a shop before I even am on stat. Like before I'm even hired there to consult for them, I'm there for a couple of days just shadowing, just to see like what they got going on there, like what are they failing at, and I just take notes for 2 days. And then what I do is I put a plan in place, and then I come in and I interview every single employee. So I'm interviewing all the employees. I'm finding out like what do you like about the company? What are your challenges? What are the owner's weak points and strong points? Like, I really dig into the nuts and bolts of the company itself before I even really step foot in the place, so I really want to know like the whole big picture before I step in there and start working with these shops. And then unfortunately, a lot of techs, especially technicians and salespeople, once they're doing a process, it's really hard to change them. Like, they may tell the owner, like, yeah, I went to this training and now I'm doing this process. They're totally BSing you. When you ride with them, they have no clue what the hell they're doing. And so my goal is to find those guys that really want to get better and they want to learn and they're anxious to make more money, because I'm a big spiff guy, and getting guys, money for what they're doing out there. And so in order to do that, they have to make the owner money. They have to make the company money. So, but through that, they see that they can make more money and they want to get better. And then they start taking your process, and then you see the excitement in their eyes, and now they're really selling, and you're setting goals with them and they're watching their numbers rise. Unfortunately, it's the other guys that don't care, that have been in the industry for a while and they're not changing their ways. And unfortunately, at that point, I'm normally the one that has to have the conversation, and I'm letting some of those people go, but I'm filling those spots with new guys, and I'm training them from the ground up, to the point where you're really kind of weeding out the people that are holding you back, and you're bringing in fresh blood that really they want to learn the industry, but they're only learning your process. So, and that's kind of the goal, is to have a team of people that are just using your process. So it doesn't matter who you're riding with. If you got a guy that's new and you want him to ride with one of your guys, it shouldn't matter which guy they're riding with. They're all doing the same process. Unfortunately, it takes some time to get to that point in some cases. So,
yeah. So I got a question for you. So obviously that's, part of the benefit of hiring someone like you is you can do the ride alongs, you can be there, you can make sure they're following the process. But what about those, like, let's say after you leave, is there something that advice you would give to a manager and owner, like how often they should be riding with their technicians or their salespeople to make sure that they're actually either A, continuing to follow the process, or B, following whatever new process they have been trained on?
Yeah. So, follow-up is important. So typically, most of the people that I work with and train, I stay in contact with them. Like, the owners know, even if I'm not working with their shop anymore and I've moved on to another one and graduated them, I'm still calling their guys and asking them how they're doing, and I'm looking at their numbers. A lot of these shops use different programs, Service Titan Field Ed, all these different programs. I have accounts for all their programs. I know where all their numbers are at. I call guys out. I ask them. I'm like monitoring how much time they're on the job before they start taking pictures. And so I can tell if they're actually doing my process just by looking at their program and seeing what they're doing out in the field, if they're following the process.
How long should they be on the job before they start taking pictures?
It depends if they're in the sales side or if they're in the service side. Sales guys, typically, I don't like to see pictures being taken for an hour, because I want them, if they're following my process, they're sitting down at that table and they're building all kinds of rapport. They're having conversations, and then they're going down into the basement or wherever they're going to take pictures and stuff. If I see guys taking pictures 10 minutes after they're there, I know they're not doing my process, or something happened, but service techs typically, they really should be having a conversation with the homeowner for, at least 20 minutes before they're down in the basement, because how do you build rapport, ask questions, find out what's going on, and really know what the customer's looking for. If you walk in and go right down in the basement and start looking at a furnace, you haven't built any rapport, you haven't earned any right to give the homeowner any kind of information or sell them a membership or anything, because you haven't even talked to them and they don't know who you are. You're just another guy in their house right now. So
what if you're the technician type that is not a quote unquote people person? Like, you got into the industry where you're like, hey, I really like working with my hands. I love the satisfaction of fixing this equipment. But to have a 20-minute conversation with someone before I even look at a piece of equipment seems very daunting to me.
In my opinion, they're the funnest to work with, because you can see the growth in them as you're working. I'll tell you, it's a lot of role playing. So when I get to these shops, most of the time I have an hour to an hour and a half with the techs every single time I'm on site, and I'm just role playing with them. I'll take specific techs and we'll just work together, and we'll role play situations, from the greeting at the door to building rapport, asking me questions. And then we'll move on to the next step in the process, and we'll role play. We'll talk about presenting repairs or setting the lead for replacement. And we'll role play that thing until that guy has got it down. He might suck out in the real world with communicating with people, but when he's in a customer's house, he's pretty rock solid. So because the key is getting them comfortable talking, and that's the hard part. So once you get them past that, then you're in a good place.
Yeah, and what I love about what you're saying, and this is where you can either hire a consultant, they can help you implement these things. But if you're listening to this episode, Brian is literally telling you what you need to do in your business right now, even if you don't ever contact him. Ride-alongs, role play, customer service training, technician training, like all of these things. Like these things need to be a part of your weekly rhythm. And it needs to be a part of your company's culture if you want to get to these levels that some of these companies are getting to, because that's how a lot of these guys are doing it, but they're consistent. They're, and I'm gonna use an Aaron Rodgers example because I saw him in the news last night. He was bashing his new wide receivers, but they're not performing. But he continued every day. He expects greatness out of them and practices with them and stuff like that. And that stuff, there's a reason pro sports teams and things like that are so good at everything they do, because they practice it every day.
Mm-hmm.
There's no days off. So we have to look at ourselves. If you're going to be a professional in a trade, you have to treat yourself as you are a professional, not just a hobbyist that sometimes does this because you want some beer money. And that's fine. If that's what you want to do, you can go do your own thing and, be Chuck or whatever, whatever other acronym you want to give the guys that just ride along for beer money. But if you want to grow a business, you have to treat yourself as a professional and take the time to set up these trainings and make sure your team has this information, because a lot of these guys don't know. They've been at a lot of companies that they don't have anything like this in place. So you treat them right, you take care of them. And companies like, and one of the companies that Brian mentioned was one that was in a coaching group that Tersh and I have both been a part of, and they grew massively, and they ended up exiting their business. And this was after Brian worked with them, but they grew very massively when Brian was there because he put these systems in place because they needed them. So enough on my soapbox. What other challenges when you start with a new shop? What are some of the, we talked about a couple of the common ones. Are there any other like common challenges that you see that businesses really should take a look at regularly?
Yeah, I think from the top, I think a lot of companies fail from the strategic planning side of things. So I'm getting into strategic planning season now with most of my shops, and so that's key to going into a year with a plan. And most of these companies don't have a plan. They don't know what they're just going into the next year without a plan, and they're just hoping things are going to be great. And so for me, like, I really try and teach them what does strategic planning look like, and when do we do it, that kind of thing. So I really focus on, what's your plan for next year? What's your goals? Where do you want to be in sales? Like, is it attainable? How many people do we need? How many trucks do we need? Where's our pricing at? What are our competitors doing? And going through each individual employee and grading them out and seeing, like, where are we at with these guys? Do I need to work on training with this guy? Do I need to fire this guy? Do we need to hire, where's this guy at? Like, and we need to do that with every single employee going into the next year. And so most companies fail at that. So typically, as we're getting into this season right now, we're working on the, dates for strategic planning. And typically what I do, I don't like to do strategic planning at their shop. So I take the owners, we go somewhere, we'll rent a cabin somewhere, we'll Airbnb somewhere, and we'll get out of town so they're not being interrupted. I make them turn their phones off, and we try and get out and just focus on the business for a couple days straight. And it's typically a 7 to 12, 1 in the morning, session where we're at it all day long until we leave, to come back home, and we have a really good plan in place. We know what the goal is, where we're going with this company. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't change throughout the year. Budgets change, as we're growing and things like that. And you got to make decisions throughout the year, but you have to have a plan. So that's one of the first and foremost things that I work on with these guys, is really helping them to understand their business and actually planning versus flying by the seat of their pants.
So as far as getting ready for planning season, because again, this goes into I won't say most, I won't generalize, but there's a lot of companies out there, they don't know their numbers. I know I was in a spot back when I started in the industry. I didn't know what the hell I was looking at a P&L and all this type of stuff. Like, it was just, I'm like, that's cool. Like, I don't know what any of that means. Is there some things that business owners can do to get themselves ready for that? Because like I said, some people just don't know.
If there's money in the checking account, I have money to spend.
Well, it's like, well, hey, there's money after payroll, so that's good, right? And we want to make sure, especially, it is middle of August as the time of this recording, so there's a couple months left in the year, and usually like that October, November timeframe is when the businesses who really grow fast are the ones that are starting to strategically plan. But what numbers what kind of information should they be pulling so they have it to look at and maybe have a conversation, even if it's with an accountant, some kind of financial advisor or anything? What kind of numbers should they be looking at?
Well, typically, every financial statement that you can pull is going to help. Your P&L. You basically, what I like to see is my year to date versus my percentages broken down, and so I can see like what are my sales, what are my equipment costs, what are my material costs. And I like the shops that I work with. Most of the time when I go in there, I have to redo their financials and set them up the right way so we can go through the financials and diagnose issues. Most of them have everything just clumped into one thing, and you can't really diagnose. Do I have a problem in service? Do I have a problem in the install department? Is my supplier charging me too much for this stuff? And in order to do that stuff, you have to have those numbers broken out on your financials so you can actually go in and diagnose and look at percentages and figure out, where I'm at with my materials, or is my labor high, or am I spending too much money on this, or am I not spending enough on marketing, or what, so, that's one of the things I like to do, is really dig into that stuff, because that's really what, moves the needle. If you can make little tweaks and changes through, on your financials, it makes all the difference, but you have to be looking at those every single, month and going through them. So typically I like to go through financials, a couple times during the month, just so I know where I'm at. And if I have to make changes, I can make changes now versus waiting to the end of the month. And then it's like, oh crap, I lost money this month. It should be, okay, well, here's where we're at. We need to make a change right now. Let's do this. And so that starts with strategic planning and getting these guys to understand what their numbers are supposed to be, where they're at, and then how do I change and what do I got to do to make it right. So
what would you say to a technician who's starting their own business and they don't have a year's worth of numbers yet to plan out for next year?
Well, keep it simple at first. I mean, especially if you're just starting out, but figure out why you're supposed to be charging what you're charging. So if you have a truck, I mean, you still have data to go off of, even if it's small data. But what are your expenses and your overhead, and why do I need to charge? Most of these guys charge because their competitors charging this, or my service fees this, so I'm going to charge that.
We see that all the time.
Yeah.
How much are you charging for R22?
Yeah, exactly. So but it's one of those things where you have to have them focus on their company, not everybody else's, and just charge what you need to charge to get to where you want to get to. If that's 20% profit or 10% or 50%, wherever you want to be. Let's set you up for that. And then you have to really monitor those things as you're going through through the week, the year, the month and everything. And you make tweaks as you go. And when you're new into the business, you have to make tweaks constantly all the time. And then as you get bigger, you're still making tweaks, but it's not as much because you don't have, all this overhead as a larger company, but you got your stuff in order by that point, hopefully. So
Hopefully. Now,
Awesome.
now, what would you say to someone who says something to the effect of, well, I have my old F-150, and so I don't have a truck payment, and so I don't have overhead, and I'm working out of my garage.
If they're happy with that and that's where they want to be, that's great. But if they, are like most people that got into the industry, they want a new truck and they want their own shop and everything, but there's a certain time when you can do that, right? So, you have to be strategic about when you buy things. That's one of the biggest mistakes most companies make is they start growing a little bit and they're like, oh crap, I'm going to buy 5 trucks this month. Or, and next thing you know, they're behind. Now they're like, holy crap, now I got to pay for these trucks and they're sitting in the, so, but it really, what is that truck going to make you if you're working out of that truck? What is that truck going to make you each individual month? And what do I got to sell to pay for that truck and everything else, and you roll with it. There's a lot of people that should buy trucks and they don't because they're very frugal and they don't spend money and then they don't grow. I have a shop that I work with that the guy, we'll talk about implementing stuff and it takes him 1.5 years to put something in place. Or hey, we need to buy a truck because we're going to be hiring another guy because we need to do another this much per week or per month from another service tech. So you need to get a truck, and then 1 year will go by and then you'll finally get the truck and then we'll grow, so it's just a matter of,
well, what
your goal
Brian,
is.
what would you say if it's so now it's August and say you got a little cash in the bank, your guys have been busy all summer long, and you're like, okay, I need another technician.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that we're coming into what is basically 70 degrees for 4 months, 6 months, for the next 6 months. And it's never really going to get cold here because I'm in South Georgia, and we'll have like 2 weeks of 30s. And then the rest of the times it's 70s. And
you're so spoiled.
Right. Well, the thing about it is like, so what would you say to those people who are like, I need another technician, but if I get another van right now, there's a chance they could be sitting there. And also you don't want to overpromise and underdeliver whenever you're hiring a new technician. And then all of a sudden the bottom falls out and you don't have any work for them.
Yeah. So that's one of the main reasons why I'm big on hiring guys with no experience and training them up, because it's a lot easier to sit on a guy that's not getting paid a lot and you can have them riding along with guys and training and sending them to a tech school or whatever else. There's a lot of great schools out there that you can send techs to where they can get a good base of knowledge. But the goal is train them during the off season. So by the time you're getting in your busy season, you got a guy that's at least ready to make some money for you, even if it's just doing some basic maintenance. You can train guys. Like I got guys that have only been doing it 3 months. They're in their own truck and they're selling, $20,000-$30,000 in indoor air quality alone, and they've only been doing it for a couple months. So, but it's really, it's really planning and hiring guys with no experience. One of the cool things that I do is I typically don't work with 2 shops in the same market. So I'll pick, this shop on this side of town, and then I'll go on another part of the state and I'll work with another shop. The nice thing about that is when you have this trust factor where they know you're not working with competitors, but at the same time, guess what? I got a new tech here. This tech over here is killing it at this shop. I'm going to take this tech and have him go shadow that guy on that other job or that other company, and vice versa. They'll send call center people to their call center, and I got different guys going to different shops and shadowing because they may have a little more work in this area. And so I utilize my companies that I'm working with, and they all love it because they might hire a new call center girl, and I can say, hey, this girl is selling 30 memberships, 40 memberships a month, and then and let's get her over in front of her so she can see what this girl's doing. So So I try and utilize that, but really the goal is hire them when they're young and they don't have the experience and the baggage, and then you can train them and afford to have them on staff when you are slow, because you can get them ready for the busy season.
So how do you find them? Because it's the
Well, you got to get on
skilled
TikTok,
trades.
Tersh.
Well, the trades aren't as glamorous as as other industries out there.
Yeah, so there's a couple things you can do. Like I'm a big proponent of being in contact with the trade schools. Like I want your best guys. Who are your best couple guys that are good with communication and are good at fixing stuff? Those are the guys I want. Send them my way. We'll pay them well. We'll take care of them, and we're not going to just throw them out to the dogs. We'll make sure they're trained properly. But having that, I mean, you can put an ad out for apprentice and get 200 guys in most cases, at least where we're from. I can put an ad for an apprentice out, and tons of guys will be jumping all over wanting an opportunity to be in the industry, you know. But I also
so I've seen that before, but then they want to come into the industry as an apprentice making $45 an hour.
Yeah, and that just comes with, you know, you gotta, you know, take the people that know where they're at. You know,
Yeah.
I like to hire guys that are hungry, but they also know, like, I got to start at the bottom and work
They got
my
to prove
way up.
themselves.
Yeah, and they know that, like, I got big goals. Here's where I want to get. Like, I have a guy, a service tech, and he's like, I'm like, what? Ideally, when you get to a point where you're comfortable in this career, where do you see yourself with your W-2? Where do you want that to be? And I had a guy, and he's like, well, you know, once I'm a good service tech, I'd like to make 150,000 a year. And I'm like, all right, so here's what we got to do. And then I put a career path together for him. I'm like, okay, so you need to learn all these things here first. And once you get to this, then I'm going to bump you up to here. Once you got all these things and whoever you're working with has signed off, and I've signed off that you know all these things and you can show me that you know them, then I'm going to bump you up to here. And there's a career path to get them all the way to a certain point. But then after that, it's all based on sales and productivity out in the field, and you following the process and selling stuff, you know. So I'll get them to where they want to go, but it's their attitude that's either going to help them or hold them back. So
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, Art in the live chat comments, I think he's on Facebook watching us. Shout out to Art for that. He asked, what's the national average hourly rate for a successful residential HVAC service department?
It's a bit of a broad question, but maybe you can kind of narrow
I don't
down
know
what you see regularly.
Hourly pay for the tech or hourly billing rate. I'm not sure which one, but I guess
my guess is he's talking about hourly billing rate.
Yeah.
Just based on the fact he's talking about the service department. So we'll go with that.
Yeah, I would say it's different at every shop. Like you were saying, Josh, it's a kind of a broad question, but every shop is different. It depends on your financials, right? So it comes down to, what do I need to charge a customer? Most of the shops that I work with, I don't really promote the hourly side of things. I'm more of an upfront pricing kind of a guy. So every task that the techs are doing, whatever your service program is you use, like most of the shops that I work with, I go in and I rebuild their whole service program. You know, some of them, if they're using Titan or whatever some of these other programs are, I'll go in and build their whole software program. But what I do is I take, you know, their financials and I figure out, what do we actually need to charge for this individual task? You know, if I'm changing a gas valve, what's that gas valve cost me? I'm going to send my highest paid service technician out there. What is he making per hour? And then I figure all my overhead out, and I figure out what I actually need to charge for that task to get my percentage of profit that I want at the end of the day. So if I'm trying to make 30% profit or 35% profit on service, then guess what? By the time I'm done costing that part out to how much I need to charge, at the bottom line is going to say that I'm making 35% profit on that. And I do the same with everything, whether it's install, it's indoor air quality, guaranteed when they sell a job, I know for a fact, as long as my material prices are in order, they're going to make this percent of profit on that job when they sell it. But
so that's, I mean, it's essentially a sold hour type of setup. whenever you're doing that, you still have an hour, quote unquote, hourly rate, but it's not like your time and material hourly. And so with that being said, are you of the mindset that the service department should be able to cover the overhead of the entire company, or does service department just cover their overhead, or is the service department a loss leader to get leads flipped over to the install department?
I wouldn't say they're designed to cover the whole company, but if you're breaking all your financials right, and most shops are, if you're doing it right and you're at like a 80-20, 20% service, 80% install, your install department is what's making you the money, so but your install department is being fed by your service department. So if you're training the guys right and you're looking at 12 to 15-year-old systems and your camera and heat exchangers and you're doing the process that I'm training them on to do, they're flipping these leads on a regular basis. And then the sales guys should be selling 80% of those lead sets, so minimum. So if they're doing their job right, and it comes down to the scheduling your dispatchers. So if your dispatchers aren't scheduling the service techs correctly, then your install department's going to suffer. So the goal of training your dispatchers is to say, hey, I need this many 12 years or 15-year-old systems on my maintenance plan, guys, every day. I need this many every day. And I know that this percentage is going to be flipped because if I know my data of my company, I know on average I'm doing this many that are flipped. So I can, at least know that my sales guy is going to sell this percentage of those leads set, which pretty much guarantees me that I'm going to keep my install department going based on my numbers if I'm scheduling right. So most people just look at filling the schedule and then they roll with it. That doesn't set your service department up to succeed, and it doesn't really help you to feed your salespeople. Or if you have selling techs, if you got a really good selling tech and you keep putting them on 5-year-old systems, guess what? You're gonna get what you get.
Yep.
So
yeah, there's a lot that we could dive into there. We're running out of time.
Yeah.
But Josh, do you want to add anything?
No, I guess I just want to re-clarify what Brian's saying. Brian's saying you have to know your business. That means you cannot be in a truck 14 to 16 hours a day every day. Maybe at first to get it off the ground, but at some point you have to understand that being a part of as a business owner or somebody who wants to own a business, you're not going to be the hero in the truck forever. You have to understand these other things and educating yourself, whether that's through online groups, business coaching groups, someone like Brian who's more intimate with it's one-on-one. Find somebody, find a group, find a network that can help you understand these things and help you be accountable to learn these things. Brian, where's the best place if anyone that is listening to this wants to reach out to you individually? Where should they do so?
You can email me at brian@bearfruitconsulting.com. Or you can call my cell phone. It's 262-719-6697. I will always answer my phone, or I'll call you back. I'm pretty diligent about staying in touch with people and follow up and stuff like that. And if you're teaching it, you better follow it. So but yeah, I would just say, closing on my side, just really get to know your business. The owners out there, it's not about you, it's about your people. If you invest in your people and get them the training that they need, I would say the right training, your company will just flourish because of that. But sometimes we're in these success groups and we come back with all these things and we learn all these things, or we have a trainer come in and train. But if you don't, like, for me, what I like to do is I like to stay with the company until they're good, so not just come in, do a training for a day and see you later. And then all these guys are sitting there with their hands in the air. It's really sticking with them and following them up and getting them the coaching that they need. I do it on a weekly basis on the board here. I'll have tons of texts from companies all over, and I'll call on them and ask them what their challenges are, and we'll handle the challenges that they're dealing with out in the field. We'll write them down on the board if it's whatever it is. So, but you got to train.
Love it.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on the show, Brian, and everybody that's watching and hanging out with us. We truly appreciate you hanging out with us. And if you have any questions at any time, don't hesitate to go to our website, servicebusinessmastery.com. And in the bottom right of the corner, there's actually a little widget that you can record your question, and we would love to answer it. We'll answer it there, and then we can also ask it on the air if it's something that needs some like peer influence, I guess. And so huge shout out again, Brian, for you coming on the show and helping answer some questions. Some of it was kind of high level and 30,000 feet kind of questions and answers that we could probably take a week just of conversations to answer some of these questions. But I hope some people got some value out of this episode. If you did find value in this show, it is free to you. But one thing that we would ask you to do is share it with your friends. If you have a colleague that can find value with this, or a competitor that needs to learn how to pricing, and just share it with them. Say, hey, listen to this episode, and leave a review. But yeah, that's all my plugs. Oh yeah, and subscribe. But I hope you have a wonderful and safe week until we talk again next time on Service Business Mastery Podcast. Thank you again, Brian, and we'll see you later.
Right. Thanks, guys.
See you, Brian.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Service Business Mastery. Now that you are equipped with essential business advice from this impactful conversation, you are one step closer to becoming the successful owner of your dreams. If this episode has been helpful to your business journey, don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave a rating, and share it with other owners as well. Visit servicebusinessmastery.com to learn more.